We can conceptualize mobility as a human-machine hybrid. And if you look at the car, which has been the dominant vehicle in transportation engineering over the last decades, we can see that in this hybrid, the machine dominates. 80% and more of the hybrid is actually the machine, and 20% of the hybrid is human. And this number is even rapidly declining. But if we look at cycling and the cyclist, this hybrid has the opposite characteristics. 80% of what we see in these images is human, and maybe only 20% of what we see is machine. And this radically changes how we should observe them, how we should study their behavior, and how we should design for them. And the current simplifications that come from traffic engineering do not help us to achieve that goal. For instance, it makes very little sense to simplify all these different types of users into one design vehicle or design user, such as the Homo economicus, with all kinds of standard features. The diversity of vehicles that we see, the diversity of people that use them, and the diversity of purposes for which they are underway become much more relevant to study. And secondary to that, we can also see that if the human becomes a dominant part of the hybrid, we should better understand how they use all their senses, and even including the full body, to send and receive information to each other. So, what if we take these features into account in how we look at mobility? We're looking here at a busy intersection in the city of Amsterdam. And traffic engineers would see a high number of potential conflicts between Homo economicus, people that are meeting each other in public space. And maybe they would even propose traffic lights as a way to solve these conflicts. But what if we put the human central and maybe use metaphors from a different discipline such as sociology? So sociologists would look at this intersection and would see the potential exposure to diversity. And the potential exposure to diversity links to the idea and the notion that in this space, many different types of people from different walks of life meet each other. And they don't only meet each other, they actively negotiate in that public space. And if we zoom in, we can see that in that negotiation, they indeed use all their senses. They send and receive information with the way that they position their body on the vehicle, the way that they exchange views, the way that they look at each other, and the way that they incorporate what they see around them into their own behavior. Ole B. Jensen called this negotiation in motion. And this is almost like a choreography where people do not only negotiate and engage with each other, but it's almost like they perform a dance. And they are no longer only egoistic, calculating individuals, but can also be altruistic. So if we look into sociology and understand mobility from that perspective, we see that this potential exposure to diversity has a positive effects on all kinds of important indicators. It increases the sense of membership, sense of influence, and sense of integration. It creates shared emotional connection and increases the sense of neighboring. Collective efficacy and citizen participation grow, and a higher sense of community and sense of belonging are the result. And maybe most importantly, it leads to a higher sense of trust. Optimize humans and marginalize the machine. So what if we take this into account in our design? Let's look at this intersection in Amsterdam. On this video, we can see a number of people that are not complying with the design standards of this intersection. Cyclists that are not standing at the right spot or using the intersection in a very different way. From a traffic engineering frame, we would want to discipline them to behave according to the design, to change their behavior. But what if we observe their behavior and change our design? Because the human is dominant in this bicycle traffic, they can easily navigate differences in speed. And by using their bodies and their senses, they can actually negotiate and find joint solution. Like a swarm, a group of cyclists can easily adapt, and therefore we can offer much more space by, in this case, widening the crossing at both sides and using a funneling effect to the other side. And what if we take this one step further? A similar intervention relates to the use of traffic lights. At intersections where cyclists and pedestrians dominate, traffic lights are no longer required to manage conflicts. And taking them away leads to a much more fluent use of the space. It allows cyclists, humans, pedestrians to make contact with each other and negotiate how to keep moving themselves and how to keep others moving. To optimize humanity and marginalize the machine, we need a much better and richer understanding of the diversity of users. And we need to put the user experience central in how we look at and design for better mobility spaces.